The sea was calm that morning, but the wind whispered warnings through the eaves of our beach house. That old, gray Oregon sky stretched endlessly, heavy with secrets. I stood by the window, coffee cooling in my hand, watching the waves roll in with a rhythm that felt more deliberate than peaceful. We'd been living here for 3 weeks. After what happened. I haven't found the words for it yet. Ronan called it an accident. I called it a shift. Whatever it was, it cracked something open that couldn't be closed again. The house we stayed in was modest, a rental, nothing like the grand home we left behind. But the silence was different here. It wasn't just quiet, it was expectant. Not all storms come with thunder. Some come disguised as dinner parties. A month ago, we were still playing the part of a family. I remember that night clearly. How could I forget? The dining room was too polished, the food too perfect. Corliss, my mother-in-law, had outdone herself. Again. Crystal glasses clinked. Laughter floated above veiled jabs. Ronan sat beside me, ever the buffer. Across the table, his brother Silas was making yet another smug comment about Tawny's charity gala. "You should have seen the mayor's face," he said, puffing up. Tawny grinned. Corliss beamed. And then she turned to me. "You've never organized something like that, have you, dear? But I'm sure you have other strengths." I smiled. Tight-lipped. One thing about growing up the youngest of 3 girls in a household that forgot birthdays, silence becomes armor. They say the loudest women are often the most insecure, Corliss added with that same sweet smile she used in every photo op. "Like that saying," she chuckled, "if you have to tell people you're important." Everyone laughed. I took a slow sip of wine. Ronan didn't look up. That night, after the performance ended and the kitchen was ours alone, Ronan dried plates while I wiped the counters. The quiet between us grew heavy. Then he said it. "Don't trust my mother." I stopped moving. "What?" "She's not just playing games anymore." His voice was low, almost apologetic. I turned to face him. His eyes were serious, tired. "You've known this. Why now?" "She said something to Dad last week. I didn't like her tone. She's planning something." He wouldn't say more, only that I should be careful, that he'd seen things, patterns, threats disguised as tradition. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, but because something inside me had shifted. Tolerance morphed into something sharper. It's funny, I always thought Corliss was cold, but she wasn't cold. She was calculated. She ran charities, chaired boards, sent thank you notes in perfect cursive. People called her elegant, well-spoken, but behind closed doors, she wielded approval like a weapon. I came from different soil, grew up in a duplex in Tacoma where dinner was whatever we could microwave and conversation was survival. My mother worked nights, my sisters moved out young, and I learned early that blending in meant surviving. Corliss didn't blend, she commanded. And I had tried, God, I had tried, to make it work. But that night at dinner, the mask cracked. The next morning, Corliss set the breakfast table like a stage. Pancakes, fresh berries, newspaper folded just so. She poured orange juice, handed me a glass, then set it, like she was offering weather commentary. Some women should know their place, especially those who marry up. Tawny smirked. Silas chuckled. Ronan didn't laugh. Neither did I. I gripped my fork under the table, keeping my face still. But inside, I burned. She wasn't just talking to me, she was warning me. And that's when I knew. They were never going to accept me, not because I wasn't good enough, but because I wouldn't stay small. After breakfast, I stepped outside. The sky had darkened. The wind pushed hard against me, as if trying to tell me something I already suspected. Ronan joined me, sliding his arm around my waist. He didn't look at me, just stared out at the ocean. "If something happens," he said, voice barely audible over the crashing waves, "pretend we're dead." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment I realized we weren't just guests in their home. We were threats to their legacy. I stood in the kitchen, unmoving, eyes fixed on the slow swirl of steam rising from the coffee pot. Ronan's words from the night before circled in my head like vultures. "If something happens," Pretend we're dead. He hadn't said it like a joke. There was no smirk, no sarcasm, just quiet certainty. Like he'd rehearsed the line 100 times in his head before letting it slip. I wanted to believe he was being dramatic. But the way he looked at me, that kind of fear doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from knowing, from experience. Still, a part of me wanted to scream at him for waiting this long, for throwing that bomb at my feet and walking away. And yet, another part of me, the quieter, sharper part, was already starting to connect the dots. Later that morning, we drove to the overlooked trail on the south side of town. It wasn't a planned trip. I just told him to get in the car. We needed space away from the walls, away from ears. We sat in the car for a while before I spoke. How long have you known? Ronan's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale. It's not about knowing. It's about admitting, I pressed. Don't play safe with words. What aren't you telling me? He turned to me then. This isn't the first time my mom's erased a problem. I laughed, bitter. Erased? What does that even mean? He looked out the windshield. My cousin Liam, remember him? Vaguely, a name from a Christmas card list. She had him committed, said he had episodes. Truth is, he asked too many questions after Grandpa died. Legal stuff, financial discrepancies. She called it concern, made a few calls. Next thing we knew, he was in a facility out in Boise. I stared. And you let that happen? I was 17. What could I do? My silence pressed against him. He added quietly, if she thinks you're a threat, she won't confront you. She'll corner you, legally, socially. She'll strip you of credibility piece by piece. It wasn't the words that chilled me. It was how easily he said them, as if he'd already imagined it happening to me. I wanted to scream at him, but I didn't. Instead, I breathed deep and nodded. Message received. The next day, Ronan's uncle, who also happened to be the family's semi-retired lawyer, called us over to review some estate paperwork. No prior notice, no specific reason, just that vague smile in his voice I'd come to recognize as code for, this isn't optional. Their home office was lined with books older than me. I sat across from him as he clicked through files, murmuring legal jargon like it was weather talk. Ronan sat beside me, strangely silent. Halfway through the review, the uncle looked up at me, really looked. Just be careful what you sign, or what you don't. I blinked. Excuse me? He adjusted his glasses. Some language in these trusts. Well, just know that control often hides in the fine print. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't push, because the way he said it, and more importantly, the way he didn't say more, told me everything. When we left, I didn't say much. Ronan didn't ask. But in the pit of my stomach, something hard had started to settle. Not fear, focus. That evening, while Ronan took a call outside, I walked the shoreline alone. The tide was pulling in sharp, dark, angry. Each wave crashed like it had something to prove. I thought of my mother then, a woman of few words but sharp instincts. She once told me, there's peace, and then there's silence. One protects you. The other buries you. I stood there, salt in the wind, and made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to be buried. Leaving would have been easy. But I was done with easy. Instead, I started writing things down. Dates, times, things said when they thought I wasn't listening. I copied emails. Took photos. If they were going to come for me, they'd trip over their own lies first. Ronan grew distant. Not in obvious ways, but in how his eyes stayed on his phone too long. How he mumbled when I asked where he'd been. How he flinched when I touched his shoulder. One night, I picked up his phone while he showered. Nothing unusual in his messages, until I checked the deleted threads. There it was, a thread marked simply M. I didn't open it, not yet, but my chest tightened. The man who'd whispered a warning into my ear now had secrets he thought I couldn't see. Was he protecting me? Or protecting himself? That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed, turned, stared at the ceiling while he breathed steady beside me. At 3:15, I got up. Something told me to look again. I knelt by his dresser. pulled open the bottom drawer. Nothing. Then I saw it, wedged between the lining and the wood. A printed email. It was from Corliss. Subject, handling the situation. And it mentioned me, by name. I woke early that morning with a dull ache behind my eyes. Coffee steams curled between my fingers as I sat at the kitchen counter. Corliss slipped through the doorway, all soft edges and false concern. Rough night. You look drained, she said, voice even. There was pity in her words, or something worse. I didn't respond. Her gaze flicked away. It wasn't the first time she suggested I was unraveling. That kind of commentary always feels safe for those who don't carry the guilt. I held my breath, tasted suspicion. By midday, there was a knock. 2 county social workers stood at the door. They wore official jackets, name tags, calm faces. They said someone called about emotional instability. Do you feel safe? Have you thought you might harm yourself? They asked like it was casual. I felt the air stiffen. Ronan came in, blurting something about a misunderstanding. He told them I'd been under stress. I answered politely. My heart pounded. Because what they were asking wasn't for help, it was proof. Proof to build a story, not to comfort. That afternoon, I opened old journals in my bedroom, dim light filtering through curtains. I saw pictures, dinners where I'd held quiet laughter so it wouldn't sound like a choke, photos of gatherings where I stood to the side, invitations where I arrived late. Others spoke first, then texts from Ronan. Don't push mom tonight. Choose your words. I once dismissed them as caution. Now they read like warnings. Later, while making the bed, I found something. A small flat recording device taped under my nightstand. My hands froze. I stared. I peeled it off quietly, footsteps muted, went into the bathroom. I pressed play. My voice, shaky, mid-argument, crying. Then Corliss's whisper, "You're unraveling. They'll say you lost your mind." My stomach twisted. I clenched fists. Tears stung. Not because I felt weak, but because someone had planned this. Someone had taped me without knowledge, rearranged narrative, testified against unseen accusations. I left the bathroom, heart rattling. I found a flash drive in my desk drawer, shoved it inside my purse. I slipped outside, pacing on the back deck, salt air on my skin. I whispered to myself, I will not let them make me vanish. I set up a voice recording on my phone. I began compiling screenshots, emails, voice memos, anything. Quiet retaliation, watching, gathering, never allowing myself to be surprised again. Later that night, I overheard a hushed conversation. Ronan had gone to check on the laundry. Through half-open doors, I heard Brookie's soft voice. Once her signature is changed, she'll lose all legal footing. Corliss replied, She won't even notice. Who reads every form she's given? A cold shock ran through my blood. Betrayal so intimate. Alone in the dark, I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling, proof in hand, verification in memories. Truth aching just beneath the surface. I made pancakes that morning, smelled of cinnamon, and lined up plates at the table, hoping for one honest moment. Ronan slid into the seat across from me, eyes not quite meeting. Corliss praised Brookie's recent report for the foundation. How helpful, insightful, she said. Brookie's smile filled the room. Mine stayed still. I carried dishes, refilling juice, wiping crumbs, invisible labor. My contribution, unseen. And I thought, does she even know who I am, beyond the guest who cleans up? The mailman came before 10. Thick envelope stamped, fancy, heavy cream color. Inside, invitation to the family gala. My name? Just +1. No name. I froze in the hallway. Ronan hovered, phone in hand. He murmured, It's Corliss's decision. He didn't meet my eyes. I tucked the invite in my coat pocket, a rising shame. I nodded and said I'd go, not to be honored, but so others see I'm not erased. That evening, lights dimmed under chandeliers, dress pressed, shoes laced tight. I sat among faces that applauded Brookie. I raised a glass when she was introduced, the project she led. I clapped even though it was mine to lead. Plaque bore only her name. Names I'd put on designs, my sketches, my hours. No acknowledgement. Inside, I felt heat rush to my throat. I snapped pictures quietly, video on my phone. Someone whispered, "Didn't Birdie do this?" But the speaker didn't correct anything. The applause continued. Brookie stood tall. Corliss glowed. Afterwards, Tanya found me alone on the terrace. She pressed her arm across my back. "I saw you tonight. Don't let them erase you." I watched candles flicker, wind cool on my cheek. I flipped open my phone's gallery, photos I'd taken. I saw myself steady-faced, holding something like anger. I carried proof. Not just resentment, proof. Night came. The house quieted. I plugged in phone to back up footage, email threads, notes. I thought about silence, about what it costs. I think of Mother's words long ago. Being ignored doesn't mean you don't matter. I swallowed that truth. I would not be ignored again. Late into night, I heard a ding. Message from Corliss. "We saw your stunt tonight. We'll remember who caused trouble." I sat with my heart torn. A voice in me broke. If they decide my story, they decide my identity. I clutched the invitation, the plaque photo, the memory, all tangled. I decided, I won't wait for their version of me. I'll show mine first. Brunch began in dappled sunlight under the pergola. The air smelled like blossoms and freshly cut grass. Neighbors filtered in, greeting dusty hedges, folding chairs, crystal glasses. I poured myself tea, hands steady though my throat felt tight. Corliss stood to offer a toast. She raised her glass, voice singing politeness. Not everyone's made for family tradition, and that's okay. Brookie smiled that smile that splits the room in two. Guests laughed lightly. I forced a smile, tasting something bitter in it. My glass rattled when I set it down harder than I meant to. Everyone looked up. Ronan's eyes flicked toward mine. I stood, excused myself. No words. I stepped away into the garden, heart pounding, humiliation burning under skin. Late afternoon, I found the guest bathroom. Lock clicked, mirror cold, mascara uneven under my eyes, breath caught. I said aloud, even though no one else was there, "I will not be erased." I stared until the reflection cracked in memory. My grandmother's voice came back. "People can only step on you if you stay lying down." I pressed record on my phone. I spoke softly. "If anything happens to me, this wasn't an accident." The words tasted of resolve. I stood, wiped eyes, took a pull of water, let silence settle. Evening found me in the conservatory. Dim light, untouched wine glasses, shadows long. I asked Corliss for a moment alone. She nodded. We sat across from one another. I looked her in the eye. "You've made it clear you want me out. Just say it." She tilted her head, kind smile, voice gentle. "You're imagining drama where there's none." I felt anger coil in my chest. I let it rise, but in a whisper. "Try me again, and I promise I'll stop being polite." She held her composure. I ended with this. "I'm documenting everything. Don't forget that." Back in the hallway, I paused. I heard voices behind a closed door. Brookie's soft tones. "Once we get that signature, her access to the trust is done." Corliss replied, calm, measured. "She won't even know it's been filed. We'll use the old copy, tweak the date." I pressed my back against wall, phone in hand. Footsteps quiet, breath steady. I recorded what I could. My heart thumped. Legal danger. My name in danger. Home later. Night creeping through windows. I sat at my laptop. Timeline open. Files copied. Audio clips loaded. Emails sorted. My throat felt raw. I typed a message to Ronan. "I know what they're planning. I'm giving you one chance to stand with me." I stared at the send button. Thrum of waiting. 1 hour passed. Silence more eloquent than any reply. I stood, whispered into the quiet room. Then I'll stand alone. I closed laptop, turned off lights. Something felt different. I felt sharper. I walked through the front door after a midday meeting, the sky dimming with clouds. The hallway felt colder than usual. There was a painting hung freshly on the wall, a family portrait that once included me, center, dresses, and hands intertwined. But now, my face was subtly wrong, the light on my cheek shifted, my smile was painted softer, my eyes painted narrower. Someone had replaced me in history without telling me. Brookie stood just inside, guests circling behind her. She smiled at compliments. Elegant, flawless. Corliss hovered by the doorway, light laughter. I asked who picked the portrait. Her voice low, certain. I always had good taste. Church voices approved gentility. My heart clenched. The past clicked in flashbacks, images of myself present, later photos missing me, times I posed holding bouquets, quietly. I recognized the manipulation. That night, no, after dinner, I gathered old photo albums, scans from childhood trips, digital photos saved on hard drives. I spread them across the dining room table. Images of me at birthdays, weddings, casual picnics. Then I compared them to this new portrait. Jewelry I wore in a photo matched the jewelry painted, but the face was not mine. Posture dragged. Background trees in the churchyard wrong. I found a photograph my grandmother gave me, yellowing edges, exact light, exact shadow. I held it, tears stung. I snapped a picture, texted Tanya. They're rewriting your memory. Her reply, hold on to truth. From an old box of documents, I found a letter, my mother's handwriting, faded ink. She wrote about us, how family traded authenticity for calm, stories hidden so silence wouldn't rupture everything. I loved you, but I feared the storms silence brings. I sank to my knees, reading in the dim lamplight. My mother understood. She saw what I now see. I wept, because my pain was inherited. Later, with the letter in hand, I walked upstairs to find Ronan reading something by the study doorway. I held the letter up. Did you help them erase me? My voice was quiet, but cut. Ronan dropped the paper in his hand, eyes flicked away. He stammered about love and fear. I watched, he admitted. As a boy, I watched her decide what family remembers. This betrayal wasn't loud. It was soft, but it weighed tons. I realized love had become loyalty to a lie. I would stand alone if I had to. Back in my room, I packed a small box. Grandmother's photo, voice recordings, original letter. I sent messages to Patty for legal counsel. Options mapped out, evidence secured. I whispered, they cannot change what I remember. Before sleep, my phone lit up. A notification. Someone posted a quote. It was from me, but twisted. A statement about the painting, edited to sound like I was complaining. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. My words shaped into someone else's accusation. In that moment, the fight was no longer internal. It was public, and I refused to be rewritten. I woke in the dark, trembling. My forehead pulsed from the memory of applause, the speech, the way people looked when Brookie took credit. Ronan was gone, the bed empty beside me. I groped for my phone in the glow of moonlight, messages from Tanya, Patty, questions, assurances, guilt. I pressed my hand to the mattress, trying to anchor myself. Betrayal lodges in the chest like broken glass. Later, I called the video team, my voice steady but brittle. I asked for the raw file of the gala speech. They hesitated. We'll check, they said. They showed me edited clips first, ones where I sounded unsure, hesitant. Then they played the original, firm, proud, articulate. My words cut through the distortion. They want me confused, I said to myself. It's one thing to be misrepresented. It's another to have your truth edited, twisted. I sent side-by-side clips to Patty. I could taste both rage and hope. Midday came, and with it, a ring. Caller ID, law offices of Patty Hearst. My heart locked. The lawyer said the confession edit had been lodged with a neutral review board. There was movement. Tanya had found witnesses who saw Brookie coaching the MC. One neighbor overheard her say lines to repeat. Relief washed in. But under it, fear, exposure invites backlash. I gathered evidence in my mind, considered places where lies piled up, where silence had cost me. I realized the fight must be louder than the whispers. Dinner arrived at the in-laws' home, tables set with linen, silver utensils dull in the candlelight. I sat facing Corliss, Ronan beside me, his hand barely touching mine. Corliss said, "Bertie, I saw your video online. I hope this is just confusion." I held my breath. Then I said, "I've watched both versions. Which one do you want the world to believe?" A hush fell. Brookie laughed lightly. Corliss's smile curved, strained. Tanya watched from across the room, eyes sharp. I felt the weight shift. Plates quiet. You could hear knives if you listened. After dinner, I locked myself in the bathroom, voice recorder in hand. I spoke carefully. My speech was clear. Their edits distorted it. My voice matters. I did not lash out. I did not plead. I refused to be silenced. I looked at my reflection and saw someone not just hurt, but dangerous in her clarity. "Let them hear my voice," I said. I promised myself I'd stand. That night, a knock at the door broke the silence. Brookie stood there, envelope in hand, face composed. "We need to talk," she said, her tone dead calm. I took the envelope. My hands shook. Whatever is inside will change everything. I wake to sunlight creeping through the blinds, casting stripes across my bedroom wall. My heart pounds even though my body feels hollow. Ronan is gone. He left early. I reach for my phone. Notifications flood in. Rumors, whispers, edited clips, screenshots. My name tangled in gossip. My mind flashes to Brookie's snarl last night, Corliss's wink as people stared at me. It's not simply betrayal. It's public bait. Something has changed. I can't hide behind quiet anymore. I arrive at the town hall meeting with my shoulders stiff, dress pressed, phone ready. Brookie and Corliss flank the stage, smiling. The crowd murmurs about last night's gala. One person asks through the mic, "Bertie, is it true you claimed credit for what Brookie did?" Brookie nods. Corliss looks satisfied. A hush falls. My voice blooms in the air. Check the footage. I hold up a tablet, the unedited speech playing. My words uncut. The crowd gasps. My mouth moves like in photos, confident, unedited. Brookie's smile slips. Corliss blinks. I say, "You can't erase someone's truth just by silencing their voice." And for a moment, I own the silence that followed. Afterward, I receive letters, formal, thin-smiled threats of defamation, rumors of me harassing, newsletters repeating lies. The person next door says someone claimed I was unstable. Ronan touches my arm, voice soft. "Let's talk to a lawyer before doing more." I nod, though anger coils inside. I dig through laws, call Patty, send copies of footage, emails, witness accounts. Every threat becomes evidence in my hands. Support trickles in. Neighbors, friends, strangers who saw parts of it. Tanya, Nanny, people who believed me even before I spoke. One neighbor shows me a video where Brookie whispered suggestions into the mic. Another shares past photos, unaltered, confirming the narrative I carried. I gather sworn statements. I prepare a public statement, every piece of truth lined up. Then I post. I upload the version with no edits. My voice recorded clearly, my words uncut, the confession snippet, the comparisons. Social media lights up. Local news picks up the story. Corliss scrambles. Brookie tries to smile. My phone buzzes with messages of support, some apologies, some defenses. My stomach twists at each notification. The next night there is a knock. Corliss stands there, tear-filled eyes, envelope in hand. Truth or consequences? Her face is quiet, almost broken. I take the envelope with hands that don't shake as much as they did. I know what's inside will change everything. I come home from my morning walk, the air crisp and cold, coffee warming my hands. My breath clouds in front of me. I see an envelope lying under the door. My name isn't on it. Only Brookie's scrawl in ink I recognize from childhood birthday cards. I kneel, pick it up gently. Her handwriting shakes. "You were right, and I'm sorry." My heart skips. Not a threat, not an accusation, an apology. Her words stutter through regrets, manipulation, fear, guilt. She ends with, I hope you find peace even if I don't deserve it. I sit there, silence thick in the room. I cradle the letter, weighing bitterness against relief. That evening, Ronan and I sit on the porch, sky burning pink and gray. I hand him the letter. He reads. His face crumples. He tells me he wished he'd stopped Corliss sooner. Wish he'd said something, done something. I say, we can't fix who raised us, only how we move forward. He nods. Wind carries chimes from the eaves. We speak about boundaries. About legacy. We decide to rent a cabin upstate for a few weeks. To breathe, to heal. I whisper, let's write the story we wished we had growing up. Within days, the community's view shifts. A local journalist covers the story without sensationalism, just facts. Townsfolk who once muttered now nod at me on Main Street. I'm asked to speak on family trauma at a local wellness panel. At the event, a woman stands up. She says, "You gave voice to women like me." Her words carry weight. I meet others who were silenced, overlooked. We exchange email addresses, share stories, build something small, something hopeful. I pull out old photos and my mother's journal from a box in the attic. Journals I neglected, pictures I dismissed. I read entries. You always stood back up, even when no one clapped. I trace my younger face in those images. I see strength I forgot. I see the girl who endured. I forgive more than I thought possible, not to excuse what was done, but so I can release it. Then comes the final decision. An email from Corliss's lawyer offering a non-disclosure agreement, a settlement in exchange for silence. I stay silent, face closed. I look at Ronan. He waits. I say, some truths are too valuable to sell. We reject the offer. I send a short letter to Corliss. This isn't revenge. It's release. She never answers. I sit at my desk, evidence donated to a nonprofit for family abuse survivors. I pack Mother's journal, original photos, letters. I feel lighter, though scars remain. A quiet strength pulses in me. Truth, my own voice, not theirs.